Hello, my name is Hakon and welcome back to my channel and day number 2 of owning and using the Dysphonia by Dreadbox, the Euro rackable, the standaloneable and USB powerable modular patchable synthesizer from Dreadbox. This was announced a few days ago as a DIY kit, single run, and it is now sold out. So if you missed this one, you probably missed this one, unless you can find one second hand, which might be possible. You never know. I do call this modular and not semi-modular, and I will explain that because people tend to use the terms wrongly or they use them differently, which I suppose is the correct way of saying it. So when you have a synthesizer in a single unit, standalone, it isn't necessarily a semi-modular unless it has normalized signal paths. So you have pre-patched connections from, for instance, the oscillator to the VCA, and the VCA is pre-patched to the envelope and the LFO to modulate it, and that is then pre-patched into the filter, which is pre-patched into the effects. On this one, all the different modules are standalone. They're just on a single board with a shared front panel. So you have to make all the connections with patch cables from one to the other. This has some pros and cons. One of the pros is, of course, it's easier to patch things in an interesting way because you have to do it from scratch. A con is, of course, that you get lots of patch cables, even with quite simple patches, and it can be a little bit cramped to get to the controls and see what you patched where, but you can get used to it. For me, I'm used to using a much bigger patchable synthesizer in the Kilpatrick Phenol, and I'm used to having more space. For me, it feels a little bit cramped, but I will get used to it because I think it's worth getting used to it because I love the sound of this little thing. Now, I'll just do a quick run through of the modules now. So there's an oscillator, which has square wave, sawtooth, triangle, and noise. And of course, you can use all the different outputs at the same time, which is an interesting thing. One thing it does not have, which is quite a common staple on Dreadbox synths, is a sub-oscillator. And you do miss that sometimes to get that low frequency oomph and girth and weight from your sound by adding that low octave in addition to your normal output. There is a pulse width modulation input. There is no pulse width modulation knob, so all of it is controlled by CV. And there are also 2 CV inputs here. And then there is a tune knob and a fine tune knob. And the fine tune knob has quite a huge range, so it's not really that fine a tune, I would say. I'm not sure exactly how much because I haven't measured this now, but this is a good at least 3 volts, I think, of tuning. That is quite a lot. Then we have 3 VCAs, and the left one here is meant to be an audio VCA, and the other ones are meant to be CV VCAs. And then there is a mult, which of course means you can take a single input and patch it in and route it to up to 3 different outputs. It's a passive mult, so it doesn't attenuate, it doesn't amplify anything. So yeah, but that works rather well. Then we have a mixer, which can be used, I suppose, for both audio and for CV. 3 inputs, each with their own attenuators, and an output which has an interesting control in that it is 0 in the middle and then it goes negative or positive. So it is a passive attenuverter mixer module. Very nice. Then we have what at first glance looks like a very rudimentary MIDI to CV input here, and it is quite rudimentary, but it is a little bit more complex than it looks at first glance. There is a MIDI input, which is this type A, and where did it go? I had it here just a few moments ago. So it comes with its own cable from mini jack to MIDI DIN, and it is type A, of course. One should always bear in mind what type of mini jack MIDI you have, because there are two types, A and B, and they would have, if you try to connect them one to the other, your wires will literally cross. So on this one, I just put a little D showing it is my Dysphonia, but I should really put an A so I know it is type A. I only have mini jack MIDI on my Zoya, and that is type B. Either I would have to go via MIDI DIN, or I would have to get a mini jack cable that is from A to B, which is possible to get, a one that crosses the cables inside the cable. Right. And it has CV output and gate output, but it also controls certain functions in the digital mod module here, which can respond to MIDI CC, and it can respond to aftertouch, to velocity, and to mod wheel in one of the modes, which is quite useful. Also, the envelope in the mod is triggered by the keyboard or by a MIDI controller rather than by anything else. So it is the mod and the MIDI modules are quite closely connected, and you use the set button here together with the type button to, for instance, change LFO shapes or change the envelope mode on the mod. So the mod can be an LFO, and it can be triangle, sawtooth, ramp, and square. It can be a sample and hold, although it works in a slightly strange way, and of course it doesn't have a sample and hold input. The input is from the MIDI input, it seems, it has MIDI CC, and did I forget something? Hang on, I'll just check the manual just to see if I remember now. So yes, LFO, sample and hold, envelope, and CC. Yeah, those are the 4 different modes of the mod module. Then we have a normal envelope here, which is attack decay, and of course this one also has an extra control that is used together with set, because you only have one slider that is supposed to control both attack and decay, which means when you push set as a shift button, then you set attack, and if you don't push it, then you are controlling release. Then we have LFO, which is that just a square wave or a triangle? I think it's just a triangle wave. I'll have a look at that afterwards. And all these, by the way, have level outputs, so they have attenuators on the outputs, which is useful to have. And this is the rate for the LFO and CV input, and of course this envelope has a trigger input. Now, one of the things that I really like about this synthesizer is the filters, because it has 2. It has a self-resonating 24 dB low-pass filter, which is very much your usual kind of filter you expect to get on a Dreadbox synth. Very nice sounding, and of course when you crank up the resonance, it will self-resonate and you can play the filter. And that's also as a sine wave oscillator as well, in addition to your other ones. Then we have a multi-mode 12 dB filter, which is low pass, band pass, or high pass. It has resonance but does not self-resonate, so it doesn't go that high, unlike this one. Then we have finally a gritty, dirty digital delay echo module, which is also something we have seen on other Dreadbox synths before. And one of the nicest things about that, of course, is it is CV modulatable as well. And there is a special function in this one, because if you do the board exactly the way the instructions tell you, you will get a maximum delay time of 0.3 seconds, I believe. There is a resistor you can remove, and if you remove it, you will get up to 1 second, but the repeats gets quite even grittier and even dirtier, and some people might like that, some might find it a bit much. What I'm thinking maybe of doing one day is to remove the resistor, or to at least move the resistor so that I can switch it on and off. So that's one of my future modding plans for this synth. Right, enough talk. Let's do some sounds. Right, first of all, I need to power it up. And oh yes, the power, I can say something about the power as well. So it is a nice USB type B socket, nice and solid. It requires, according to the instructions, a good cable and also a minimum 1 amp USB power supply. So you can't expect to power it from, for instance, from a computer necessarily, or from any USB hub. So a good USB power supply. I'm using the one from my iPad, which is 2 amps, I think. So that is quite sufficient, and just a normal USB cable, nothing fancy. I'm just going to plug in this MIDI as well. I'm going to use that later to demonstrate some things. Then let's have a little look at waveforms. So now I have, this is my, I don't have a proper mono mini jack audio cable that I can use for this yet. I had to order some because everything else I have uses 1/4-inch jacks. So while I'm waiting for those, this is the closest thing I've got. So I'm just gonna plug this in now. And we will be getting a sawtooth wave, and I was going to show you now the because the fine tune, which is quite a big range. So that's almost, so I suppose it's just 1 octave up, isn't it? Nice sawtooth shape. Let's just do the triangle. Quite nice sharp triangle there. Square wave. And while I'm on square wave, I suppose I should show you pulse width modulation as well. I'm going to connect it now to the LFO. It's going to make it a little bit shorter there. And the LFO, by the way, goes into audio rates, as you can hear. And there's also a noise, which does not respond to tuning. So that is the oscillator. So nothing particularly groundbreaking, I suppose, but it sounds quite nice. I'll just do like this. Just do. Let's see, do we get? Oh, hang on. I keep accidentally inserting my main plug from into the wrong place, because I'm not used to having the CV inputs be at the top of modules, but there you go. So now I'm just letting the LFO control the pitch. Okay. So that is the oscillator. Let's have a look at the VCA now. I'm just going to do the triangle, I suppose, and we do our input there and our output. And the audio VCA is does not have an attenuator or any controls. It's meant to be run purely from something external. So this is quite... Okay, there we are. So I'm just running the VCA from the LFO. And this has 2 inputs, so I suppose we could put something else in here as well. I'm sure that's enough to actually for anything to happen. Add noise. But now the noise is going to be more dominant than the triangle wave. Anyway, so it's let's just try the other one here. This is a bit different. It's going to do it with audio now instead of. This is a bit louder. So this one is linear, and the first one is exponential, and of course the third one is exactly the same now as the second one. And this one can be cranked up a little bit as well. And then we have the mult, which let's see if there's anything I can do to show you that properly now. So if we take maybe we do, so from the LFO we are going into CV input, and maybe we can go into pulse width at the same time, and even the VCA, I suppose. Just do all of those. Now LFO is controlling pitch, pulse width, and VCA. No pulse width, no CV. So it's a nice way to multiply a signal to use it in several places. And then we have, of course, the mixer, which I suppose is quite common to use for different control signals. I suppose we could just patch in all our different modulators now, see what we get. So if I do like that, see if something happens now. Guess now just patch in the LFO, the envelope, and the modulator. The envelope isn't triggered by anything right now anyway. Into the mixer, and now that's sending out a mixed control signal that now is used for the mult, that is used to control the pitch, the pulse width, and the VCA for the audio. And an interesting thing about the mixer now is that the 0 point is at 12 o'clock, and then it goes positive and negative, so which, depending on what you're doing, can create different effects. And each of the inputs on the mixer have their own attenuators. So now nothing is happening. That doesn't have any effect. Right, so that is the mixer. Let's just remove this now, just to keep things a little bit tidy. So now I'm going to show you the MIDI input and the mod input. So I'm just going to have to find my MIDI keyboard. Just give me a few moments. Right, so now I've got the Korg micro key connected to a MIDI USB host, and that is connected to the MIDI input of the Dysphonia. So let's just start with the CV output to the CV input of the oscillator and just take a triangle wave out. So you push a key, it does its thing, it changes the pitch, and it stays there, of course, because that's how MIDI works. It retains it's a sample and hold in a way, the MIDI pitch input when you. And that's why you also need a gate usually to play with the MIDI keyboard. So I'm taking the output now just to the sawtooth to the VCA here, and I'll take the gate output into the VCA. So now it's only gating when I'm doing that. Of course, one thing I could do is instead of gating the VCA, I can gate the envelope and then let the envelope gate the VCA. This is a rise fall envelope, attack decay, that is, or attack release. But this is actually a complex feature, is you can change modes on the envelope. You can't change modes, but you can change what the rate knob is controlling, because now you've got a very short attack. If you want a longer attack, you press set, and you can move the knob. Let's see, that's not quite what I was. There we are. So now I've got a long attack and the short decay, and it just keeps going. It's in trigger mode. So that's a super short attack. You can do really short ones. So now I've got a short attack and a long decay. That's short. Okay, let's keep that decay, and then I can. Let's keep it there. So that's quite nice. I would have liked an ADSR, of course, but I mean, it's a tiny, compact synthesizer. It's more than I'd expect anyway. Just to have an envelope is great, and also technically you have two, because you have the mod that can also function as an envelope. Let's just leave that for now. Okay, so the mod has several different functions. Actually, I'll show you that perhaps by connecting that straight to the audio now. So this is in LFO mode. And it's a triangle LFO, but you can set different wave shapes by using the set button. So by set and clicking type, you get sawtooth, ramp, and square wave, and back to triangle. Brilliant. And then it is the second mode here is, let's see, I don't think that's going to be possible to hear directly now. So I take the CV output into pitch, the output of the mod into VCA. Now I should be able to hear what's going on. Actually, I'm going to use one of the other VCAs to get a bit more volume now. This is actually a sample and hold module. Exactly how it's sampling and holding, I'm not exactly sure. And there's two different modes. It's gated or normal. So if I set it to, now it should only happen when I press the key. Oh, that's very loud now. So I'm not quite sure exactly how I want to work that one yet, but it is a sample and hold. And then it's the envelope mode. I'm going to reduce the volume a bit there. So again, it's an attack decay envelope. So now I'm setting the decay now. There's also, it can set the oh, did I do it right now? I'm not sure. Okay, so now it's triggering as long as I'm gating it. And when I release the key, then it starts the decay. Oh, that's quite cool. I'm back in LFO mode, actually. Okay, that wasn't intentional. Let's see. There's supposed to be two modes of the envelope. So if I do like that, yeah, in this mode, there's triggered or gated mode. So in gated mode, when you hold down the key, then the attack is going on until you release the key, and then it goes into decay. And then in triggered mode, when you press the key, it goes through the whole envelope. So when it gets a trigger, I suppose, and that is when it gets a trigger from the MIDI module. So it will respond to note on MIDI as a trigger for the envelope. Okay. Then there is the CC mode, the last mode of the, and this is where it by default responds to mod wheel, as you can see now. Let's have to reduce the mod depth a bit there. And it can also respond to aftertouch. I can't show you that because it doesn't apply to my keyboard. And it can respond to velocity. So if I change it twice now it will mod to velocity. I'll take it back to mod wheel, which is the one I normally would use. And you can also use these controls here to change the MIDI channel as well. Let's look that up now just to be sure I remember it correctly. Let's see, where is it now? So if you press the set key so it lights up, then it is an omni mode and it will respond to MIDI input on all channels. And then if you press a key on the controller that is on the channel you want to use, then you can press set again, and that is the channel that now is set in the MIDI interface. So quite an intuitive and easy way to set MIDI channels. I can't demonstrate that right now because I don't have anything but one channel of MIDI at the moment, but that is how it works. Right. Let's have a look and listen to the filters, because I know lots of people are going to be looking forward to that. So let's see, where are we now? The input there. So we are taking the sawtooth wave to the input of the, oh, hang on. That's the LFO, to the input of the low-pass filter, and the output of the low-pass filter, then we take that back to the input of the VCA. Let's just do resonance 0. Resonance 9 o'clock. Resonance 11 o'clock. $12 o'clock. $1 o'clock. 2 o'clock. 3 o'clock. 5 o'clock. All the way. And this is called self-resonance. So if we just do the without the input now, I remove the input. So now this is just the sound of the filter. And there it is, a sine wave. And then I can take the pitch from the MIDI keyboard to the CV. Doesn't sound like it's tracking very well right now, but that doesn't matter for me. So that is possible to do. It is possible to use the filter as an additional LFO and get some interesting sounds out of that. Let's try the other filter. That is, let's see, this is the low pass input. And of course, the low pass filter has a, well, I can try that too, of course. So we have the, let's see, that's the output. And let's just use an LFO as a CV input. Working quite well. Just wait for that for this one. So I'm going to do that's the input and a low pass. It seems to run a little bit hotter actually. The wave is getting crushed a little bit at the bottom there. So that's our CV input. Band pass. I'll just remove the LFO. It's not a very strong band pass. Quite a mild one. high pass. And of course, an interesting thing to do is to take the sound into the low pass filter and then into the high pass filter. And then you can shape the sound in quite interesting ways. Or I'll just do like that and add now adding just the resonance from the first filter as an additional sound. Some interesting, nice, gritty, almost wavefoldy kind of sounds. And of course, then we have the echo, which is of course quite interesting. I'm just going to remove this input there and just take this in here. I'm just going to put that back in there. And then I'm just going to actually just go straight for the echo output now. So let's do the low pass. So we have feedback, mix, and time. This one is, let's see, I'll just try to, I'll just use the normal low pass filter instead. I'm not sure if it's my cable that's a bit noisy now. That doesn't sound quite right. I'll just do take it back into the VCA anyway, so I can control it a bit more. So that's the maximum time there. Maximum mix, maximum feedback. And the feedback at the maximum is getting louder and louder. So that's for the LFO controlling the low pass filter. But I could also make it go into the mode, so I can control the low pass filter and the echo. And that's pretty much it. I think I've shown you pretty much everything now about the basic functionality of the Dysphonia. Another thing to say, by the way, because this, I understand this was an issue on the Typhon, that the USB power was noisy, but of course with the when they developed the Nymphes, they managed to sort out the noise problems, I understand, and so the current batch of USB power supplies that Dreadbox use in their synthesizers from now on are going to have a noiseless USB power supply. So that's not a problem at all. At least I haven't detected any problems with the USB power supply. So that was just a quick-ish rundown of the different functionalities and some sound examples of how the Dysphonia works. And it's definitely got a lot of potential for interesting patching and sounds. With especially with the 3 VCAs molten mixer, you can do so much, and of course 2 filters, and also you can have 2 envelopes, you can have 2 LFOs, you can have different things here, so you get lots of modulation possibilities as well. Even if you don't use MIDI, you still have a lot of things just inside the box. So quite a fun little thing to have. It is Euro rack mountable, and of course this would play nicely with other Euro rack gear. All the inputs and outputs are bipolar. The manual quite clearly states exactly what voltage ranges that each input and output respond to. Some are plus minus 5 volts, some are plus minus 10 tolerance. So it's nice to, if those things are critical, which they can be, of course, you should look at the manual and make sure that you don't overload the inputs. Right, I think that's all I wanted to say today, and I really hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please like, share, comment, subscribe, join me on Patreon, buy me a coffee, etc. And I'll see you in my next video, which might be a demonstration of more sounds from the Dysphonia. Goodbye for now.